So the ongoing tragedy in Woodstock, New Brunswick, regarding the 3-year-old child who died after being struck by a race gate. You know, the trucks go around and pace the harness horses. The gate struck him. They gambled at the track for hours after his passing. Now, it reminded me a lot of what happened to Clint Malarchuk. He almost died in the ice after being hit by a blade. And basically, the game went on after they were told he was stabilized. He never canceled the game. Same with Owen Hart falling out of rafters. He went ahead. But I don't want to talk about these tragedies. I want to talk about the purity of Clint Malarchuk's connection to various points of NHL history. He helped repopularize the AJHL in New Brunswick. His time with the Fredericton Express. He was part of the Richard 78 battle as part of the brawl of all brawls in Montreal in Game 6 in '84. A key player that brought Joe Sakic to Quebec during a trade. His early years at the WHL. His overall support of various mental health causes. He's a writer. He's a performer. All-around great guy. So I'm this story about Clint Malarchuk is going to talk about how he got into the NHL from early beginnings and why I think he's one of the most underrated goalies of his era. Not say he's going to make the Hall of Fame, but for me, he's a Hall of Fame guy. Now, in the 1981 NHL entry draft, he was taken in the fourth round. Now, there was a lot of goalies that were taken that year. And the number one goalie taken, of course, was Grant Fuhr in the first round. Not saying that Clint was an afterthought, but you look at the other goalies that were taken, they weren't of his quality. So 74 overall is kind of, like I said, a normal stuff. Now, Corrado Mikalev, who was taken Detroit in the third round, was strong as well. And you had Mike Vernon in the third round, so the people who were taken that year, the top goalies, they did a lot of positives in their career. And don't forget, Wendell Young was taken at 73 right before Clint was. So, as we go along talking about Clint's career, it's safe to notice that Malarchuk was all about quality. The native of Grand Prairie, Alberta, first came to major prominence with Fort Saskatchewan of the AJHL. He played 34 games in 78. Now, 79, he played 51 games in the AJHL and then eventually ended up in Portland for the last of the campaign, 1-0-1. Now, he was eligible in the 1980 draft year. He went 21-10-0, but was not drafted. 6 feet, 175. But by 81 came along, the former junior rodeo star had a 28-8-0 record, and the Nordiques took him. Now, the Nordiques cage was pretty busy back then. You had Gosselin, Daniel Bouchard, some other key players. I think Michel Place was around there too at the time. Now, he debuted on December 13, 81 versus Buffalo. He's beautiful, number 30. Now, the idea about Malarchuk, his AHL years, we're talking about that phase of his career. He was a big star in New Brunswick for a number of years. I think he played parts of 5 seasons in the capital city. Now, eventually became a coach for 4 NHL teams and 2 minor league squads, most recently the Calgary Flames. Now, he now lives in Alberta and Nevada. He splits time. Now, with the Portland Winterhawks at WHL, he eventually went with the Nordiques, the Capitals, and then the Sabres. He also helped to develop the IHL teams in San Diego, Las Vegas to great fanfare. He had a career record of 141, 130, 45, and 12, and an .855 save percentage. Now, when he made his NHL debut with the Nordiques in December '81, he got the starting goal in a road game against the Sabres. The Nordiques were dissatisfied with former Montreal Canadian and backup goalie Michel Place at the time and decided to give Malarchuk a look. In spite of his young age, he was only 20. He did well enough in his first game, a 4-4 tie, but the second one, 2 days later, was a lot tougher as he faced the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Islanders. The Nordiques favored a wide-open style of play at the time, and Malarchuk was left largely to his own devices and faced 37 shots, letting 10 in a wild 10-7 loss. It was the highest scoring game in the history of Nassau Coliseum. Of course, more history. Having failed his audition, he was returned to AHL after the contest and did not come back in the following season. Quebec traded Place to the Hartford Whalers later that year in return for John Garrett, addressing the team's need for a reliable backup for Dan Bouchard. Now, he played sparingly in the NHL the next 2 seasons. Now, going over those years, again, with Force Saskatchewan Traders, again, he won 59 games in those 2 seasons. And in Portland, he won 51 in the regular season. Now, with the Nordiques in 82, 0-1-1, but good numbers in Fredericton, despite a big goal total, 15, 34, and 2, like the main number 1. 83, he found his way back at an 8-5-2 record. The Express that year was 14, 6, and 5. 84, back with the Nordiques, 10, 9, and 2, but played 11 games in Fredericton, 5, 5, and 1. By 1985, ladies and gentlemen, we thought he was on the outs with Quebec because he had already gone through the multiple goalie phase. 85, Quebec Nordiques, franchise in Fredericton, 26, 25, and 4, and he went 2 and 4 in the only playoff games he played in the NHL. 86, he had a solid season for Quebec, 26, 12, and 4. 87, as pretty well the number 1 goalie, 18, 26, and 9. Now, 86 and 87 were tough seasons for the Nordiques because they lost in the first round. Then when he got to the Capitals, he was again kind of the number 1. But with Buffalo, again, with the incident that cut his throat, it was just something nobody saw coming. Now, when he spent all those years in the IHL, it basically legitimizes San Diego and Las Vegas' franchise there. With the Gulls, he had a very successful playoff run in 93. In Las Vegas, 34 victories there. That was his pro high for one campaign. Now, the idea about Malarchuk, he's great Ukrainian descent. Most Ukrainians are great hockey players. Now, after his playing career, he settled on a ranch near Carson City, Nevada, near later Gardenville, Nevada, where he and his wife at the time raised 3 children. In the mid-2000s, he became certified as a vet technician and runs a practice as a horse dentist from his ranch. A visiting photographer once, unfortunately, had his camera flash stolen by Malarchuk's emus. Now, Malarchuk's nickname in hockey was the Cowboy Goalie because he was active in the Calgary, Alberta area rodeo scene during the hockey off season. He was also depicted riding bareback in a front-page newspaper photo while playing for the Caps. He was later given horses as a contractual bonus with the Las Vegas Thunder. He also credited his cowboy upbringing for his toughness when returned to play for the Sabres after the incident. Now, when he released an autobiography called The Crazy Game in November 2014, it was to much fanfare. In the States, the book was published with the title A Matter of Interest, How It Survived Increase and Beyond. The book eventually became a Toronto Star bestseller list through January 2015. It was made into an acclaimed documentary. Now, following its release, Clint and his wife Joni were public speakers about topics covered in the book, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder, support for alcoholics in recovery, suicide prevention, and psychological trauma. On May 7, 2015, Malarchuk was a guest speaker at the Canadian Mental Health Association meeting in Oakville. And on August 1, 2015, the duo were keynote speakers at the International OCD Foundation Conference in Boston. They showed the video footage of his sports injury to the audience with the advice that it potentially triggered the people were uncovered with images of blood and trauma. But what that really helped out, the neck guard that is used quite often now for goalies and other players, became standard. But like I said, it almost killed Richard Zednik too, the skate blade. Now, Malarchuk and his wife now travel and engage in a number of league-related independent events having to do with mental health, OCD, and depression in retired athletes for obvious reasons. So, another thing we're talking about NHL history. He was a spare, by the way, at the NHL USSR Rendezvous Series in '87, but did not play. So, how did this is one of the strangest trades of all time because it came out pretty even on both sides. Quebec in 1987 in the summer traded Malarchuk and Dale Hunter to Washington in exchange for Gaetan Duchesne, Alan Hallworth, and the first round pick, which turned out to be Joe Sakic. So I don't know who got the best of that trade. Dale Hunter was a factor in Washington, so was Malarchuk. And Hallworth and Duchesne were just, kind of a marginal third line and second defensive pair of players. But Malarchuk, I remember the Quebec press talking about, he said, were they training to get that pick? So the Hunter, I think, overstayed his welcome in Quebec because he couldn't get them to that next level, which was the Stanley Cup final. They made a semi-final round, bet Montreal twice in 82 and 85, but way it goes. But Clint Malarchuk, I don't want you to go online and check what happened. I still can't believe he's still alive. But the amount of shit that he should have got for not calling the game. Remember that NFL football player took a heart attack during the game and he stopped the game? Like I said, it's a different personality in the 21st century. You know, they were more concerned about cleaning up the ice after Malarchuk and that the medical technician wasn't there to put pressure on his collarbone to stop the bleeding. I think it was a half a gallon of blood and 300 stitches. So for Clint to still be around. But if you really want to watch something, when he took on Richard Savigny in the '84 brawl in Montreal, that's pretty freaky. He was a good fighter. So that's the story of one of our cowboy hero, Clint Malarchuk, who basically was king of New Brunswick for a number of years. God bless him. Aitken Centre was his main home in the AHL. If you like what they're doing here, to our tribute to our AHL alumni in New Brunswick, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.